Since the death penalty was reinstated in the United States in 1976, just over 700 prisoners have been sentenced to execution in California alone. Less than 24 of these are women. The last execution in California occurred in 2006, and since then, a significant number of prisoners have been waiting their turn on death row. All of California's death row inmates are housed in facilities that are practically overcrowded. With nothing more to say, let's analyze all the details of this criminal story together. Another family from Little Taipei. Manling Tsang Williams was born in 1979 and lived a happy life for many years with her husband, Neal Williams, and their two sons, Devon 7 and Ian 3. She was a loving and dedicated homemaker. Despite having some problems with her husband, she loved him and her two children. Those who knew her say she was kind and generous. The family lived in a condominium on the 18200 block of Camino Bello in Rowland Heights, California, located in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. This area is considered ideal for vacationing due to the general income levels of its population, housing prices, school district, and the overall environment, which includes many tourist and commercial attractions. Several corporations, such as Newegg, FedEx, DirecTV, and Fashion Nova, as well as other technology, import and export companies, are located in the neighboring city of industry. Many business owners and employees live in Rowland Heights. According to the 2020 census, the population exceeds 48,000 people, with a high Taiwanese population, earning it the nickname Little Taipei due to the significant influx of wealthy immigrants from Taiwan. Everyone around the Williams family was fully convinced that Manling loved her husband and children, but they also knew she had some problems. During high school, she had a boyfriend, and although the relationship ended after a couple of years, she was always in love with John Gregory. It was common for her to reference those years and her love for John in conversations with her friends. Inside the Williams home, not everything was rosy. Manling often told her friends that she had many arguments with her husband. Some believe she married young and under pressure because she was pregnant. One of her closest friends, Melanie Ramirez, lived with the couple for a few months and said Neal often borrowed money from Manling. Financial issues added to the couple's other differences. Despite their ups and downs, it could be said that Manling, her husband, and her children led a normal life. No one, perhaps not even Manling herself, could anticipate the horror that was about to unfold. Determined to change her life, Manling chose the darkest path to escape her situation. On the night of August 7, 2007, she decided to do whatever it took to build a new future without her family, but with the love of her life. Just a few weeks before, she had started talking to her high school boyfriend again, and even met up with him on several occasions. During this time, she thought about a different life, one where she could return to those golden years of her youth in the company of her love. John, however, was uncomfortable with the fact that Manling was married and preferred to end the relationship before things became more complicated. He told authorities that he decided to end the relationship, and when he did, Manling seemed to take it calmly. He suggested that if things didn't work out between her and her husband and they separated, they could maybe get back together and continue their romance. Perhaps unintentionally, John planted a small seed in Manling's mind. According to her close friends, the fact that she got married under the pressure of pregnancy had her feeling trapped in a relationship that did not completely fulfill her. This situation impeded her from having the happy life she dreamed of with her high school sweetheart. One thing was clear: as long as she remained married, she would never be able to lead the life she wanted. Any normal person might have considered the idea of divorce or separating on the best possible terms, or in the worst-case scenario, they might have run away, abandoning their family without a trace. But no, That night in August 2007, Manling decided to end her family's life. It is still a matter of debate whether she had a psychotic break or another psychiatric disorder. Many speculate and argue against the idea that everything she did was premeditated. Manling repeatedly claimed that it was something spontaneous, done in the heat of the moment. The truth is that on that night, she was dressed to kill. Neal returned home that night like any other Tuesday. Most likely, as usual, the couple began to argue over something trivial, possibly money, or because they were both unhappy in their relationship. The difference that night was that Manling had decided to end her family's life. They all went to sleep, the children early as usual, and then Manling and Neal went to bed. She covered her hands with latex gloves and walked to her children's room. First, she approached the youngest and suffocated him with a pillow. For about 5 minutes, she covered her little son's mouth and nose until he stopped breathing. Then it was her eldest son's turn. Devon suffered the same fate as his little brother. His mother also covered his nose and mouth with a pillow until he suffocated. After ending the lives of her little ones, it was Neal's turn, her husband. But first, she took some time to log into his computer and exchange messages with friends, including John. With incredible coldness, she went out for a while to have a few drinks with her friends. Back at the house, Neal was still asleep, completely unaware of the horror that had unfolded. He didn't know anything about what had happened to his children and could not suspect that it was now his turn. Once again, she covered her hands with latex gloves, took the heaviest and sharpest sword in her husband's collection, and savagely attacked him in his sleep until he died. Again and again, she struck Neal's body with a katana. A katana is a curved sword with a single edge and a pointed tip, traditionally used by samurai. Its size is around 1 meter in length and usually weighs around 1 kilogram. According to forensic analysis, Manling caused more than 90 injuries to her husband Neal. It was a savage and brutal attack that left severe damage throughout Neal's body. Now, it seemed like nothing would get in the way of the happy future she wanted. At the very least, neither her children nor her husband would be an obstacle to her happiness. After the murders, she continued with her macabre plan. She wrote a note in which Neal supposedly confessed to having suffocated their children before ending his own life. She got rid of all her bloody clothes and any items that linked her to the homicides, and then ran out hysterically screaming into the street, asking her neighbors for help, claiming that someone had murdered her family. Francine Cherda, a close neighbor and family friend, was the first person to arrive at the crime scene. She stated that she discovered Neal's lifeless body in the house immediately after Manling ran out, completely distraught. According to Francine, Neal's body was on the 2nd floor of the house. Francine also reported that the night before, she had heard a loud argument between Manling and her husband, and that after 11 at night, she saw Manling leaving the house. For her part, the murderous widow feigned pain, sadness and confusion while being interviewed by the authorities. Assuring that Manling had done nothing wrong, Francine closed the door of her house and was left without help. The police verified that the woman murdered her family because she loved another man. Manling acted as if she were completely innocent, as if she had not been the one who committed these heinous acts the night before. After murdering Devon, Ian and Neal, she called the police and informed them that she had returned home after buying some groceries and discovered that her husband and 2 children were dead, claiming that someone had murdered them. The horror that was unleashed in the Williams home involved their son and his wife. The police found it very difficult to clarify what had happened, as they only had the testimony of the sole survivor of the massacre and the little information the neighbors knew and saw. However, forensics often say that bodies always speak. For many days and endless hours, investigators tried to obtain even the smallest detail that would help clarify what happened. During this time, Manling appeared devastated, very sad, and inconsolable. This facade of suffering collapsed when officers confronted her about a box of cigarettes they found with traces of blood on it. This seemingly insignificant element placed Manling at the crime scene and cast serious doubts on her version of the events and her innocence. The authorities managed to gather a significant amount of evidence that led to suspicion of the sole survivor of the Camino Bello massacre. Ultimately, she was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and arrested. After a few months, the trial began. Prosecuting attorneys were Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorneys Stacey Okamwise and Pat Couch, while defense attorneys were Tom Aldous and Adi Takasugi. One by one, relatives and close friends of the victims and Manling testified. One of the first to speak at the trial was Jacqueline Bailey, who commented that on several occasions Manling had told her that she and Neal were arguing more and more frequently, sometimes escalating from arguments to shouting and ending up having very heated, aggressive and violent confrontations. Other friends of the couple and some neighbors corroborated Jacqueline's testimony. Some of Manling's closest friends recalled that she often spoke of being practically forced into marriage because she was pregnant. She also mentioned being in a state of despair during the death of her first child. Other close friends of Manling, such as Melanie Ramirez, offered their testimony regarding the longing with which she used to remember her high school love. Melanie's testimony was key because, having lived for a while in the Williams house, she was able to give better insight into the arguments and the fact that Neal asked Manling for money, which was also a reason for fights between the spouses. Little by little, the whole truth about Manling and John's love affair came to light, shedding more clues about the possible reasons that motivated this housewife to wipe out her entire family. Everything reported at the trial supported the thesis that Manling ended the lives of her husband and 2 children because she wanted to be with her lover. John also came forward to provide all the information he had about this case. He confessed to having an affair with the accused and stated that Manling had accused him of disgracing her husband and that Neal's accusation was a disgrace. John confessed that Manling was unhappy with her marriage and wanted a divorce, but never acted on it. John also said that he was with Manling a few days before the murder and shortly after he decided to end the love affair. According to John's testimony, Manling reacted normally when he broke up with her because he left the door open by mentioning that after her divorce they could revive their relationship. It can be said that suffocation with a pillow is a classic method, almost as old as the invention of pillows themselves. It triggers a mechanical, physical process that, together with the chemical reaction in the blood and the desperation of the victim, usually results in a relatively quick death. It takes 5 to 10 minutes for a person to die from asphyxiation, meaning Manling had at least 5 minutes to contemplate the implications of her actions while killing her youngest son. The fact that she suffocated both children raises reasonable doubt about her intention to commit these crimes in cold blood and with full awareness of the consequences of her actions. During the trial, the prosecution insisted that the evidence was more than convincing. They argued that the accused murdered her children and husband for selfish reasons, motivated by a narcissistic, selfish adolescent desire to start a new life. The defense insisted that there was no solid basis to support the prosecution's claim, much less that it implied the crimes had been part of a plan orchestrated for months. The defense asserted that the defendant was in a state of extreme mental and emotional disturbance when she killed her husband and children. Other mitigating factors were presented by the defense, such as her difficult upbringing and the total absence of some childhood support. The defense assured that the accused did not have a previous episode or history of violence. Before the murders, Manling was a kind, generous woman, albeit with some problems. Although Manling's extramarital affair with John was acknowledged, the defense maintained that there was no clear explanation for why the Williams family tragedy occurred, persistently questioning the prosecution's claim that Manling's affair was the motive for the crime. After listening to all the arguments, the jury deliberated. They could not agree and were divided over the sentence. They did not doubt that Manling was guilty, but they had doubts about the appropriate sentence. Both Williams family members and the Zhangs expressed a preference for the prosecution to accept a plea deal from the defense for a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and one that also included waiving rights to future appeals. However, this was not agreed upon. The prosecution insisted that the cruelty of the murders, the premeditation, and the cold-blooded execution of a homicidal plan merited a harsher sentence. Consequently, a new trial was convened in 2010, and after more than 2 years of statements and deliberations, a sentence was finally issued. Manling, wearing an orange jail jumpsuit and her reading glasses, had her hands handcuffed and tied to her waist. Throughout the entire sentencing, she kept her eyes fixed on the prison table. The judge explained that she would spend the rest of her days in prison until she was finally executed, as he sentenced her to the death penalty. Thus, the woman who murdered her husband and 2 children became the 20th woman to receive the death sentence in recent United States history. A long wait on death row followed. Before the fatal night of Tuesday, August 7, 2007, Manling Williams was a normal housewife dedicated to her family, with the ups and downs of any marital relationship. But behind that facade was horror. Manling was trapped in a relationship that didn't make her happy when what she wanted was to be with her lover, John. The defense maintained that the murders were not calculated executions, but rather a sudden mistake. However, forensic evidence showed that Neal Williams received more than 90 wounds from a samurai katana, which he could not have inflicted on himself, while little Devon, 7, and Ian, 3, were asphyxiated with a pillow. The jury and judge were convinced that each of the 3 murders was deliberate and premeditated. Additionally, all the murders were committed while lying in wait. Proof of this is that Manling used latex gloves to cover her hands the night she attacked her husband, Neal. The judge expressed deep concern that Manling's murders were premeditated and unnecessary. She could have gotten a divorce or run away, leaving her children with any of her family members who would have gladly taken them in. The judge maintained his stance throughout the hearings, but finally showed some humanity when he told Manling that it was not his place to forgive her, and that those who could were no longer alive. He wished for her and her family to find peace. Jan Williams, Neal's mother and grandmother of little Devon and Ian, stated that she felt calmer seeing that the trial was finally over after 4 long and painful years. In 2012, Manling Tsang Williams was sentenced to death and is now awaiting execution. It will be a long wait because she is trapped in a very slow system. Since 2006, no convict has been executed in the state of California. As the years pass, Manling Williams remains on death row, a haunting reminder of the tragic events that shattered her family and shocked the community. The slow-moving judicial system in California means that her execution may not occur for many years, leaving the memories of that fateful night to linger in the minds of those affected. Neal Williams' family, particularly his mother Jan, strives to find peace and closure despite the lingering pain. They hold on to the memories of Neal, Devon, and Ian, cherishing the moments they had together before their untimely deaths. The community of Rowland Heights, once rocked by the horrific crime, continues to heal, though the scars of the past remain. In the end, the story of Manling Williams serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions and the depths of human despair. While justice has been served in the eyes of the law, the true cost of this tragedy is measured in the lives lost and the hearts broken. As the legal process continues, those who knew and loved the victims hold on to hope that they can one day find a semblance of peace amidst the enduring sorrow.